Hello, everyone. Welcome to SCE Spotlight, a segment where we interview some SCE members and alumni. I'm Tiffany, and this is Sarah, a software engineer at Dell and one of the historical SCE figures. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm
Okay,
excited to talk to you guys.
so without further ado, let's
Mhm.
begin. You interned twice at Dell during your time in college. How was each time similar or different? And what was your thought process between choosing to intern at Dell versus pursuing new roles and experiences at other companies?
Yeah, so I did intern twice. I would say both internships. Actually, for starters, I interned in 2023. I was living in Texas at the time since Dell's headquarters is in Round Rock, Texas. So I stayed there in the summer of 2023. And then for summer 2024, I actually interned out of the Santa Clara office here. In the Bay Area. And so, yeah, I would say both internships, they had their similarities and differences. Both were software engineering internships. And so for the first one, it was pretty straightforward. The team I was working on had a automated test platform, and what they wanted us to do was just add a few additional cloud platforms to that testing and just refactor the code such that I guess at the time it was a lot more hard coded. So they just had us refactor it to be have dynamic workers just run the tests so that way you didn't have to wait, I don't know, like 4 hours for each test to finish. And then the second internship was a group of us. I think it was about three of us. We worked together to build a tool from the ground up, essentially for the product managers of that team. I guess instead of looking through various platforms like Excel, spreadsheets, and I think Oracle Agile was a big platform they were using for a while. We made a tool that essentially took all that data into one of our databases that would get updated, I believe, weekly, and then just have a simple GUI that the product managers could go in and list like the filters that they wanted and find the projects they needed to find a lot quicker. Spending hours versus maybe a few minutes. When it comes to deciding to pursue another role as opposed to sticking with the company you're at, I'd say that's a lot more subjective. If you did an internship at a company and you really enjoyed it, you liked the culture, you liked the people you worked with, you liked the work, that was the case for me going from 2023 to 2024. I'd say there's nothing wrong with continuing with that company. I was faced with the opportunity at the time to, you know, potentially pursue other internship roles. And I mean, definitely, I really do like Dell's work culture. I do like that the people I work with, they're all very friendly. It's a lot more of like a group, like everyone's encouraged more to learn. It doesn't feel as competitive. And I mean, to be realistic too, at the time, the job market was also not that stable. So that did have, I'm not gonna lie, like that did have a little bit of a contributing factor to that. But mo majority was the culture and the friends that I made and worked with. Especially, I made quite a few friends, especially when I interned out in Texas.
Yeah, sounds like you enjoyed the work culture and the how was the workflow in while you were interning there?
Yeah, so I'd say for both teams, both of them were pretty. I'd say the first one was a lot more of a agile software development. I'm sure everyone's more familiar with that. If not, that's okay. It's like you have your daily stand-ups and you have your scrums and you just go through that, give updates, etc. And so the first team I worked on was a lot more of that kind of workflow. We're interns, so they didn't expect, I guess, too much out of us, and they had a pretty straightforward project set out for us before we even joined for that summer. And I would honestly say for the second internship, somewhat the same. They had the idea of the project there. I'd say it was a little more interesting in the sense of we got more autonomy to help develop the kind of the design of the tool and like how would that be implemented. So I'd say both. I mean, it felt maybe a little more unstructured just because it was a brand new project, but I'd say definitely it felt nice getting to say like how you want it to be designed and how you would want the tool to work in the future. And so I think that's pretty cool to know. I mean, I was grateful that both work I did on both internships was used in production. So I mean, I cannot verify that for sure anymore. It's been a few years, but at the time they did put it into production. So it's nice to know that the company was using like meaningful, like it felt like our work had a little bit more of an impact, just given that it was used in the company at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got a good bit of like flexibility and like made like a good bit of meaningful change. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So now let's move on to the next question. An important part of internship experience is securing that return offer.
Mhm.
What do you think are some key aspects that companies look for when determining which interns they want to return? And what do you think you did to help secure your ROs?
Yeah, so I would say just general, and I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with what I tried to do as well, is some advice I'd give for like companies what they're looking for is, do the best work you can. In that case, I mean, just do your best to be a reliable worker. Try keeping your word on deadlines, etc. Even if that means during the initial phase, if they're saying, well, how long do you think this will take? I'm of the opinion, you mean you don't give a super long estimate, but you want to give slightly longer estimate just to give yourself that buffer time because to them, if you finish it earlier, that's great. And then if there's a few bumps or bugs that you hit while you're in the development, you have that time to figure it out and still push your code on time. So I would say definitely just do the best work you can. Another one is when you encounter issues, I would say try to be resourceful in the sense of, do on your part, try and look at documentation or, just even you're allowed to use the internet to help debug certain things, especially when it comes to work. So definitely try and do that. But, also be comfortable asking for help. So, I mean, I definitely struggled with this. It definitely for both internships in the sense of how much do I research versus how long do I wait to ask the person for questions? One of my managers, he gave a pretty good estimate. He just said, if you're really stuck, try and work on it for, a whole day. Just see what you can get done. And if you're really stuck, it's better to ask for help. Otherwise, then you're still kind of stuck in the same place. I'd also say the final one, which really I think a lot of the people you work with appreciate, is try to take initiative, especially given the opportunity. I mean, sometimes it's hard because, they may not expect that or they may not give you an opportunity to do that, and that's okay. But I know for one of my internships, they had asked me because I had already pushed a PR for one of my internships, and I know a couple of the other interns were having a little bit of trouble trying to get that set up. So my our mentor just had asked instead of him having to create a whole sync session. He just asked if I could help out. And so, yeah, definitely, if you're given those opportunities, definitely take them. Even if you're like, I don't even know if I can teach someone else, just try. I think they'll appreciate that you're, willing to help your other coworkers and just show that initiative that you really do want to grow. And I think that's it, what I ended up doing. So I would say that that goes hand in hand with the advice I'd give. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely taking initiative and like being reliable. They both seem to be pretty important nowadays.
Definitely. Yeah.
So now that you've been working full-time at Dell for over a year, what have you noticed about the difference between working as a full-time versus working as an intern?
Yeah. So I would say working full time. So you definitely get more responsibility when it comes to projects. As an intern, your team knows that you're only there for roughly 3 months. And so they're not going to give you a super big project. Whereas, if you're working full time, definitely those projects were a lot more open-ended in the sense like we came on as just standard developers. And so you have a lot more responsibility when it comes to, for example, I had to develop a feature from the ground up. So that went through what they call a HLD or a high-level design review, and that gets reviewed. You talk with your team a lot more, and you have to do your best to really understand the whole product that you're working on because having that like tangential information does help you when you're developing your own feature. Just because you can see the bigger picture and how that your stuff will plug into that. So definitely more responsibility, a little more complex of projects. Not to say that you still can't ask for help, even you're still new, and they know that. So they're willing to help you. I'd also say, at least for me, they put a lot more not expectation, but I would say like they trusted me a lot more to reach out to other people on the team that I didn't know and they hadn't even talked to sometimes. So I got really comfortable with just reaching out over Teams, even if I've never met them in person before. I just, briefly introduce yourself like, hi, I'm a new person on the team. I'm working on this feature and I just need your help with X, Y, and Z. Would you be able to help me with that? And most, like all the time, they were always, um, you know, they received that fine because you're trying to work and, they want to help you out.
Yeah, I'm sure some people are a little like skittish when it comes to, that part, asking other people
Oh,
and
yeah.
talking to new
Same.
people. Definitely. So
Yeah.
now I'd like to ask, I've noticed that in the current age of tech, networking is pretty important now. Everything's very competitive. And it's important for securing interviews, making connections, building relationships. So in your experience, why do you think so many people struggle with that? And what advice do you have for them to improve on that skill?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not gonna lie either. I also struggle with networking, and so I'd say at least from my end, when it comes to networking, I think there's a big idea of networking to get something out of someone, and at least for me, I'm not comfortable with that as much. I'd like to, get to know the person first, and I think that might help taking that pressure off of like I need to get this answer out of this person because it's better to personally just get to know the person, probably take that pressure off yourself to be like, I need to do this out of this interaction and just get to learn about maybe if this person works at a company that you want to work for, you just talk to them about, hey, you can find something in common if they're an SJSU alumni, you'd ask them like, hey, I'm attending SJSU right now. I'd really like to get into the field that you're working. Can you tell me a bit about it? And, they're more than happy to share what their experiences are. And I think, as you get to know them too, as like a person in general, you can find out what drives them in their career as well. And I think that would also help you understand maybe if they're working at company A and they are like, yeah, this is what really drives me in my career, then you can get a little bit of a gauge of, okay, this company seems to hire people with this view on like, what they want to get out of their career. And I think that'll help you to kind of refactor maybe, hey, do I have these same goals that align with that? Or maybe you could look into and be like, oh, I never thought about that kind of goal to get out of my career. Maybe I'll look into that more. And then as you build, I'd say a rapport with that person, they're more like they know who you are. And so they're more likely to also help you in areas where, it's hard, especially if someone reaches out and you don't quite know who they are. You don't, I don't know for that person if they're working at the company, if I were to just reach out to them and ask. They don't know how I work, they don't know what drives me. So it's harder for them to get to know me. But I guess that's my long-winded answer of just saying I'd say getting over that like fear slash discomfort of networking is just to try and take that pressure off and just find out more about like who this person is, what they do, and maybe like what they want to get out of their career to get an idea of that company that you're interested in.
Yeah. So instead of like narrowing it down, like, oh, just I want this one goal to get out this
Hmm.
person, you instead try to get them know them better, and know who they are as a person. So, there's a lot of skills for jobs, internships, and projects that aren't taught in class. So, what was your approach to self-studying, and how did you learn what was most important? How did you figure out what was important to learn?
Yeah, so I'd say definitely a lot of the academic career is with computer engineering was a lot of self-study and I did find most of the skills I ended up using, especially this was a lot more prominent just going from academic to especially my first internship, was I worked on some, I guess, like side projects, and that was getting me introduced. Like it was just some like um, personal projects of others that I would help contribute to on GitHub, and they would follow the agile software development format. And so, honestly, I got very used to that kind of agile Scrum method and just uploading PRs, doing all of that. And I think a lot of people nowadays, especially nowadays, are doing a lot more side projects themselves on GitHub. So they already have those skills that are necessary. I'd say that's mostly what like those are the skills that I found the most useful, especially going into my first internship. You know, like a lot of the tech requirements, you're like whatever project you work on, even you could have an idea of like, the languages, etc., but there's still the code base that you have to learn. So it does, at least at times, feel like you're relearning a lot and you're meant to learn in internships. So I would say it's more so the I guess the skills of like, you know, using GitHub, pushing PRs, doing like getting comfortable with making maybe, if you push PRs with commits, having those line up and just, I guess like the soft skills in that sense of working day to day as a software engineer, I found to be the most useful out of side projects. I definitely say self-studying, if you want to get more like into a niche area, especially software development, hardware development, etc. I'd definitely say just do some fun personal projects. I think doing a project that you're excited about will definitely help you gain those skills and retain them easier than, going to class. I mean, I think classes definitely help just lay the groundwork and help you the kind of when you're processing it in the background, you can kind of get it because you have I guess, you know, they teach you the basic theories, the basic principles, and then from there, if you want to get especially more into it, definitely doing side projects. I think because when you build a project, you have to build it from the ground up. You have to, depending on whatever you do, I'd say that those skills help you kind of become more well-rounded as an engineer. And so I find those to be the most helpful. I definitely, have partially started self projects. So those sometimes, I find that I'm getting more comfortable with it. And yeah, it does help your comfort level. So you're not coming into a job or a new internship position, full-time position, and you're terrified. I think having that, it helps ease your mind knowing like, oh, okay, I've done similar projects or I've done projects with similar processes that I think that would just help, especially just your own nerves going into it.
Okay, so now this is an interview coming from SCE, so now we'd like to talk about a bit of your time when you were in SCE.
All
You
right.
were pretty influential, and from 2022 to 2023, you were chair of the hardware team in SCE. So now that there's, a lot of AI going around and software is more easily created than before, what have you noticed about the evolution of the hardware sector in the tech world? And how do you think the sector will continue to evolve?
Yeah. So yeah, I was the hardware chair for 2022 to 2023. I think that was the one of the prime eras of the 3D pancake printer. And so but it's still like taught a lot. I mean, definitely I was not an expert at hardware joining like even as the chair, there was still a lot for me to learn as well, so I'm not gonna I'll be transparent about that too. But definitely from what I've seen a lot more, I've definitely just given my roles in the in career being software, I've become more separated from hardware. But from what I've seen regarding trends, is a bigger push definitely for integration with AI and hardware. AI chips, etc., on those boards and such as that, like AI chip design. And I think, I mean, so far AI still going along. So I think as long as that keeps going along, there's still going to be a bigger push for trying to integrate hardware with AI and just I think there'll definitely be a lot more like research opportunities on how to exactly integrate the two. Um, but I think just also given that there's a consistent push with AI and software, there's always going to be a push for AI and hardware as well, just to help, I guess, maintain the software in that sense or handle that software.
I see. Okay, and then on top of that, I know you also served as SCE president for a year. So what would you say was the most fulfilling part of leading SCE, and what was the most challenging part?
Yeah, so I'd say the most fulfilling part was definitely watching new students kind of step outside of their comfort zone and join a club that they maybe have never heard of or their friend recommended. I know there's definitely the influx of students joining from the E10 require extra credit. I don't know if that's still there, but definitely it was cool to watch. They would join. You're not really sure what the club is about. You know that they do projects. It'll be good to gain those skills. And then it was fun watching them become more integrated into the club. Like as they spent more time in there, they made more friends. I always say that I've made all of my friends at San Jose State from the SCE. So definitely it was a good environment to make friends. And then also just watch them get interested in like what avenue they wanted to pursue just because they've been in there, talked to other people who were part of SCE for longer and even just worked on some projects. So I know a lot of people really liked dev team, but I'm seeing that especially the hardware team was pretty small when especially when I was chair and then even when I was president, it was still it was starting to grow a lot more. And so it was nice to see that, students come in and kind of find their, not, I don't want to say niche, like they're going to stay with that, but at least find something that they are super interested in. So I would say that that's the most fulfilling. And then I would say that the most challenging part would be, honestly, to be transparent, was just imposter syndrome. I think as being president, I mean, that sounds like a very generic answer, but it was very true. And I think my friends could also say the same, was that challenging part with being president and the imposter syndrome is that when you're kind of a head of a club, whether that's your chair or that you're a president, I would say that, you feel like you have to know everything about everything. And that's not always going to be the case in the sense that, you know, you sometimes you can't. Like I struggled with having feeling like I needed to know every single thing about software, everything about hardware, everything about event planning and PR. And realistically, I mean, some people could. I mean, with also trying to balance your regular school workload on top of that, that's sometimes not going to happen. So you have to get comfortable with kind of knowing what you don't know, and then also being comfortable with just reaching out and asking for help with some people who might be even, have more skills in one area than the other. Like definitely with the executive board that I worked with during that year, I couldn't have done it without them. They were all very helpful and, we all worked together to keep the club running smoothly. And so I'm very grateful for the team that I worked with. And yeah, I could not have done that alone. And so, yeah, I'd say, might have been a generic answer, but definitely, I would say that that was the most challenging part of it.
Yeah, it's always hard. Like you said earlier, it's hard to reach out for help sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's about all we have for today. So thank you so much for your insight and time. It was great
Oh,
having you.
thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I get to talk with you guys.
And yeah, thank you everyone else for watching as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, hope to see you guys next time.